Jake had always loved the silence of the remote research station. Sitting alone in the middle of Alaska's frozen wilderness, the place felt like the edge of the world. Most people would go crazy from the isolation, but Jake found peace in it. He was a scientist who studied strange life forms, and the quiet helped him think. That Tuesday night started like any other. Jake sat at his computer, looking at data from his latest experiments. The numbers on his screen showed patterns of tiny organisms that lived in the ice. Outside, snow fell softly against his window. The only sounds were the hum of his equipment, and the occasional crack of settling wood in the old building. That around 11 o'clock, something changed. The lights in his lab began to flicker in a strange rhythm. At first, Jake thought it was just the old generator acting up again, but then, he noticed something odd through his window. The sky was glowing with colors he had never seen before. Living in Alaska, Jake was used to the northern lights. He had seen them dance across the sky hundreds of times, but this was different. Instead of the usual green and blue waves, the sky pulsed with deep purple and silver streaks. The colors moved in perfect geometric patterns, almost like they were following some kind of plan. Jake grabbed his heavy coat and stepped outside. The cold hit his face like a slap, but he barely noticed. The light show above was unlike anything in his textbooks. The patterns seemed to be getting brighter and more focused. Then, without warning, a brilliant flash lit up the entire valley. Something had crashed into the forest about 2 miles from his station. Jake knew he should probably call for help or report what he had seen, but his scientific curiosity was stronger than his common sense. He loaded his snowmobile with emergency supplies, medical equipment, and a portable heater. The ride through the dark forest was bumpy and cold, but the strange glow ahead kept him moving forward. What he found in a small clearing made him question everything he thought he knew about the world. A smooth oval-shaped craft about the size of a small car was half buried in the snow. It looked nothing like any airplane or helicopter Jake had ever seen. The surface was a dark metal that seemed to shimmer and change color when he moved his flashlight across it. There were no visible doors, windows, or engines, but there was definitely something inside. Jake could hear faint sounds coming from within the craft. They sounded almost like someone calling for help, but in a language he didn't recognize. The sounds were weak and getting weaker. After walking around the strange objects several times, Jake noticed that part of the surface had cracked open during the crash. Through the gap, he could see a soft, blue-white light glowing inside. The sounds were definitely coming from there using his tools. Jake carefully widened the opening. What he saw inside made him freeze in complete shock. A small figure was lying on what looked like a soft, glowing cushion. At first glance, she looked almost human, but there were obvious differences. Her skin had a faint blue tint and seemed to glow softly in the darkness. She was tiny, maybe only 5 feet tall, with delicate features and large eyes that seemed too big for her face. Her dark hair had strange silver threads running through it that caught the light. She was clearly hurt. There was a cut on her forehead, and she was breathing in short, painful gasps. When she saw Jake's face appear in the opening, her eyes went wide with fear. She tried to move away from him, but she was too weak. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He spoke softly, the way he would to a scared animal. The girl listened to his voice, and slowly, some of the fear left her eyes. She said something in her strange language, then tried again in broken English. Double quotes, help. Please help me, she whispered. Jake didn't hesitate. Whatever this girl was, wherever she came from, she was hurt and scared. He carefully lifted her from the craft and wrapped her in his emergency blanket. She was surprisingly light, and her skin felt warm despite its blue color. The ride back to his station was slow and careful. The girl drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes murmuring words in her own language. Jake found himself talking to her constantly, telling her she would be okay, that he was taking her somewhere safe. Back at his lab, Jake set up a makeshift medical area. He cleaned her wounds and checked her for serious injuries. Her body seemed similar enough to human that his basic medical knowledge could help as he worked. He noticed more differences. Her pulse was faster than a human's, and her body temperature was slightly higher. Most strange of all, her blood had a faint silver shine to it. While she rested, Jake sat nearby and watched her sleep. She looked so young and fragile. Her breathing had improved, and the color was returning to her skin. Every so often her hand would move to touch a small, crystal-like pendant hanging around her neck. Even in sleep, she seemed to fidget with it when she was uncomfortable. Jake had 1,000 questions running through his mind. Who was she? Where did she come from? How did she learn English? But those questions would have to wait. Right now, his focus was on helping her recover. Dawn broke over the mountains. The girl's eyes opened. They were a beautiful violet color that seemed to shift and change in the light. She looked around the lab, taking in all the equipment and books. Then her gaze settled on Jake. "You saved me," she said in her accented English. Her voice was soft and musical. Jake smiled. "You're safe now. That's what matters." She struggled to sit up, and he helped her. As she moved, her pendant caught the morning light and seemed to pulse with its own inner glow. She noticed him looking at it and quickly tucked it inside her shirt. "My name is Jake," he said gently. "What should I call you?" She was quiet for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust him with her real name. Finally, she spoke. "I am Zira," she said, "and I am very far from home." Over the next few days, Jake watched Zira grow stronger. Her cuts healed much faster than any humans would, and the blue glow in her skin became brighter as she recovered. She was curious about everything in his lab. She would pick up his books and flip through them, even though she couldn't read most of the words. When she found pictures of Earth's animals and plants, her eyes would light up with wonder. Jake found himself looking forward to their conversations. Zira's English improved quickly, though she still struggled with some words. She had learned it by listening to radio signals from Earth, she explained. Her people had been studying human broadcasts for years. "Your music is beautiful," she told him one morning while he made breakfast. "Especially the sad songs. They make me feel things I don't understand." Jake smiled as he handed her a cup of hot tea. He had learned she loved the warmth of hot drinks, even though her body temperature was naturally higher than his. Music does that to humans too. It connects us to feelings we sometimes can't explain. Zira nodded and held the cup close to her face, breathing in the steam. She did this little ritual every morning now, and Jake found it charming. Everything she did seemed so thoughtful and deliberate. That as the days passed, Jake noticed that Zira was incredibly smart. When he showed her his research on ice organisms, she understood concepts that took him years to learn. She would point at his data charts and ask questions that made him think about his work in completely new ways. "These tiny life forms," she said one afternoon, studying his microscope slides. "They survive in extreme cold by changing their internal structure. My people discovered similar organisms on our world long ago." Jake looked up from his computer. "Your world? Tell me about it." Zira's expression grew sad. She touched her pendant, the way she always did when something bothered her. "It's called Lyrian. It's very far from here, in what you would call the Andromeda Galaxy. It was once green and blue like Earth, with great cities and beautiful forests." "Was?" Jake asked gently. Zira stared out the window at the snowy landscape. "Long ago our sun began to change. It started giving off dangerous radiation. We built underground cities and tried to protect ourselves, but the damage was already done. The radiation changed us, made us weaker. Many of our people became sick and died." Jake felt his heart sink. "That's terrible. How many of your people are left?" "Not many," Zira whispered. "Maybe a few thousand. We've been searching the stars for a new home, but most planets can't support life like ours. Earth is special. It's one of the few worlds we've found that could work." Jake was amazed by how casually she talked about traveling between galaxies. "How did you get here? That's an impossible distance." Zira smiled for the first time since she started talking about her home. "We learned to fold space. It's hard to explain in your language. We create tunnels through the fabric of reality itself. But it's dangerous. Many ships are lost." "Is that what happened to you? Did something go wrong?" She nodded. "Our navigation system failed when we entered your solar system. Instead of landing gently, we crashed. I was lucky to survive." Jake watched her fidget with her pendant again. He was starting to realize it wasn't just a nervous habit. The crystal seemed to pulse with light when she touched it, almost like it was responding to her emotions. "What is that?" he asked, pointing to the pendant. Zira looked down at it, then back at Jake. She seemed to be deciding whether to trust him with the answer. Finally, she pulled it out from under her shirt. The crystal was about the size of a marble, but it seemed to contain swirling galaxies of light inside. "It's a bioscanner," she said quietly. "It studies living things around me. It learns about their genetic structure, their health, their compatibility with my people." The word compatibility hung in the air between them. Jake felt like there was more to this story, but he didn't want to push. Zira was already sharing more than she probably should. Instead, he changed the subject. "Are you hungry? I was going to make dinner." Zira's face brightened. She loved trying human food, though some things were too spicy or too sweet for her. Jake had learned to make simple meals that she enjoyed. Tonight, he made vegetable soup and bread. As they ate, He told her stories about his childhood, about how he became interested in science. I always wanted to discover something new, he said. I never imagined I'd discover someone new. Zero laughed, and the sound was like music. In my language, we have a saying, the universe brings together those who need to find each other. I think maybe that's what happened to us. After dinner, Jake taught Zero how to play chess. She was terrible at it, but she laughed every time she made a bad move. Jake found himself laughing too. He couldn't remember the last time he had enjoyed someone's company this much that as they played. Zero told him more about her people. They were peaceful, she said, and they valued knowledge above everything else. They had no wars, no crime, no hatred, but they were dying out, and everyone knew it. That's why I'm here, she said, moving her queen into a position where Jake could easily capture it. I'm part of a scouting mission. We're looking for worlds where our people might be able to live, or maybe. She stopped talking and focused intently on the chessboard. Jake noticed her hand moving to her pendant again. Maybe what? He asked. Zero looked up at him, and he saw something in her violet eyes that he hadn't seen before. It looked almost like fear, but not the kind of fear she had shown when he first found her. This was different. This was the fear of someone who had to do something difficult and wasn't sure how. Maybe find another way for our people to survive, she said softly. Wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her tone told him this wasn't the right time. Instead, he moved his knight and smiled. Your move, he said. But as Zero studied the chessboard, Jake found himself studying her. There was definitely something she wasn't telling him. Something important. He could see it in the way she touched that pendant, in the careful way she chose her words. Whatever it was, he had a feeling he was going to find out soon. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found Zero in the crashed ship. She was completely healthy now, but she showed no signs of wanting to leave. Jake didn't mind at all. Having her around made the lonely research station feel like a real home for the first time in years. But lately, something was different about Zero. She seemed nervous all the time. She would start conversations and then stop in the middle of sentences. She fidgeted with her pendant so much that Jake worried she might break it. Sometimes he would catch her staring at him with an expression he couldn't understand. One evening, they sat by the fireplace after dinner. Outside, a blizzard was howling, but inside it was warm and cozy. Jake was reading a book while Zero worked on a small device she had salvaged from her ship. Her fingers moved quickly, but Jake noticed. They were shaking slightly. Zero, are you okay? He asked, setting down his book. You've seemed worried about something lately. She looked up from her work, and Jake saw that her violet eyes were filled with anxiety. There's something I need to tell you. Something important. Jake moved closer to her on the couch. You can tell me anything, you know that, right? Zero nodded, but her hands were still trembling. She set down her device and picked up her pendant instead, rolling it between her palms. The crystal pulsed with nervous energy. Jake, do you remember when I told you about my people, about how we're dying out? Of course, Jake said gently. The radiation from your sun damaged your population, yes, but I didn't tell you everything. Zero took a deep breath. The radiation didn't just make us sick, it changed something much more important. It changed our ability to have children. Jake felt his stomach drop. He was starting to understand where this conversation was going. Zero continued, her voice getting quieter. Most of my people can no longer have babies. Those who can, their children are often born sick and don't live long. Our doctors say we have maybe 1 or 2 generations left before we disappear completely. That's horrible, Jake whispered. There has to be something that can be done. Zero looked directly into his eyes. There might be. That's why I'm really here, Jake. I wasn't just scouting for a new planet. I was looking for something else. Someone else. Jake's heart started beating faster. What do you mean? Zero stood up and walked to the window. She stared out at the swirling snow, her reflection, ghostly in the glass. My pendant, the bioscanner I told you about. It's been studying you since the day you found me. Every day, every hour, learning about human biology. Studying me for what? Zero turned around, and Jake saw tears in her eyes. To see if humans and my people are compatible. To see if we could have children together. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He sat back in his chair, trying to process what she had just said. Compatible, he managed to say. Yes, Zero said, walking back to the couch but not sitting. Now my scanner has been running tests, comparing your genetic structure to mine, analyzing compatibility factors. And Jake, ... double quotes, she paused, touching her pendant one more time. The results are positive. Humans and Lyrians can have children together. Jake stared at her, his mind racing. So you're saying, I'm saying that you could help save my entire species. Zera's voice was barely above a whisper now. The leaders of my people chose me for this mission because I'm young and healthy. If I could have a child with a human, it would prove that interbreeding is possible. It could be the answer we've been searching for. Jake stood up and walked to the other side of the room. He needed space to think. This was the most incredible and terrifying thing anyone had ever asked him. Jake, please say something, Zero said behind him. He turned around to look at her. She was standing by the fireplace, the light casting dancing shadows on her blue skin. She looked beautiful and fragile and absolutely terrified of what his answer might be. You're asking me to help you have a baby, Jake said slowly. Zero nodded. I know it's a lot to ask. I know it changes everything between us, but my people are dying, Jake. If there's a chance to save them, ... And what about us? Jake asked. What about our friendship? What about everything we've shared these past few weeks? Zero's face crumpled. I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out for days. When I first crashed here, this was just a mission, but now ... Now I care about you. I care about you so much that asking this question feels like I'm ruining everything good between us. Jake walked back to her. He could see how much this was hurting her, how torn she was between her duty to her people and her feelings for him. Zira, are you asking me this because your people told you to, or because you want to? She looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't know anymore. When I first got here, it was just about the mission. But spending time with you, learning about humans, about you specifically, I started wanting things I never wanted before. What kind of things? A family, a real family. Not just for the sake of my species, but because I want it. I want it with you. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But I don't know if that's fair to ask. I don't know if you could ever see me as more than just some strange alien girl who crashed into your life. Jake reached out and gently took her hands in his. They were warm and soft, and they fit perfectly in his. Zero, you stopped being just some alien girl weeks ago. You became someone important to me, someone I care about more than I thought possible. Hope flickered in her eyes. Really, but this is a huge decision. It affects both of our lives, and the life of a child, and apparently the future of your entire species. I need time to think about it. Zira nodded, though Jake could see the disappointment in her face. Of course I understand. Take all the time you need. That night, Jake lay awake, staring at the ceiling. In the next room, he could hear Zero tossing and turning, probably unable to sleep too. He thought about everything she had told him, about her dying people and the impossible responsibility she was carrying. But mostly, he thought about the look in her eyes when she said she wanted a family with him. Not just any family, but specifically with him. Jake had never imagined his life taking a turn like this. But then again, he had never imagined meeting someone like Zira either. Tomorrow, he would have to give her an answer that could change everything. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling like he hadn't slept at all. His mind had been racing all night with questions and doubts. When he walked into the kitchen, he found Zira sitting at the table, staring into a cup of cold tea. She looked as tired as he felt. Good morning, he said quietly. She looked up and tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Good morning, did you sleep? Not really, you know. She pushed the cup away from her. Jake, I want you to know something. Whatever you decide, I'll understand. I never should have put this pressure on you. Jake poured himself some coffee and sat down across from her. Zira, you didn't put pressure on me. You told me the truth about something incredibly important. I'm glad you trusted me with it. But now everything is different between us, she said sadly. I can see it in your eyes. You look at me differently now. Jake studied her face. She was right, but not in the way she thought. He did look at her differently now, but it wasn't because he saw her as strange or demanding. It was because he finally understood how much courage it must have taken for her to ask him what she did. You're right, he said. I do look at you differently. But not because I think less of you. I think more of you. You're carrying the weight of your entire species on your shoulders, and you're still worried about my feelings. That takes incredible strength. Zera's eyes filled with tears. I don't feel strong. I feel scared and confused. Over the next few days, they tried to go back to their normal routine, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. They still ate meals together and talked about science, but both of them were thinking about the unanswered question hanging between them. Jake found himself watching Zira when she wasn't looking. He noticed how gentle she was with everything she touched, how she would stop to look at the snow falling outside with wonder in her eyes. He thought about what it would be like to have a child with her, what that child might look like, what kind of parent she would be. but he also thought about the enormous responsibility. This wouldn't just be about having a baby. This would be about proving that two different species could create new life together. The child would be studied, analyzed, maybe even famous throughout the galaxy. Was that fair to put on any child? On the fourth day after their conversation, something happened that changed everything. Jake was in his lab, pretending to work while actually thinking about Zira, when he heard the sound of a helicopter in the distance. His heart nearly stopped. No one was supposed to visit the station for another month. Zira, he called out, someone's coming. She appeared in the doorway instantly, her face pale with fear. What do we do? Jake's mind raced. There was no way to explain Zira's presence without revealing the truth about what she was, and he wasn't ready for that conversation with anyone else. The storage room, he said quickly. It has no windows. You can hide there until they leave. Zira nodded and hurried toward the back of the building. Jake watched her go, noticing how graceful she was even when she was scared. Then he forced himself to focus on the approaching helicopter. The visitor turned out to be Dr. Chen, another scientist who worked for the same research organization as Jake. She was supposed to be doing fieldwork in Canada, but her project had ended early. Jake, what a surprise to see you, she said as she stepped out of the helicopter. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. I hope you don't mind the company. Jake forced a smile. Of course not. It's always good to see you, Lisa. But as Dr. Chen settled in for what she announced would be a 3-day visit, Jake felt panic building in his chest. 3 days of hiding Zira, of making excuses, of pretending everything was normal. The first day was manageable. Jake made sure Dr. Chen stayed in the main areas of the building while Zira remained hidden in the storage room. He brought her food and water when Dr. Chen was busy with her own work, but he could see the strain was getting to both of them. On the second day, things got more complicated. Dr. Chen noticed that Jake seemed distracted and nervous. She also noticed that he had been eating more food than usual and that there were 2 cups in the sink when she came down for breakfast. Jake, is everything okay? She asked over dinner. You seem ... different. Different how? Jake tried to keep his voice casual. I don't know. Like you're worried about something, or hiding something. She studied his face carefully. Is there something going on here that I should know about? Jake's heart pounded. No, of course not. I've just been working on some challenging research. It's been keeping me up at night. Dr. Chen seemed to accept this explanation, but Jake noticed she was paying more attention to his behavior after that. That night, Jake snuck back to the storage room to check on Zira. She was sitting on a pile of blankets, looking miserable. I'm sorry, he whispered. Just one more day, and she'll be gone. Jake, I can't do this anymore, Zira said quietly. I feel like a prisoner, and you're suffering too, trying to keep my secret. It's okay, we just have to be careful. No, it's not. Okay. Zira stood up and took his hands. Being here with you these past weeks, I've learned something about myself. I've learned that I don't want to live my life hiding who I am or what I want. Jake looked into her violet eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've made a decision about us, about everything, and I think you have to, even if you haven't admitted it to yourself yet. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Zira ... You care about me, don't you? Not just as a friend, but as someone you could build a life with. Jake couldn't deny it anymore. Yes, I do care about you that way. And I care about you the same way. So why are we making this so complicated? She reached up and touched his face gently. My people need help, yes, but I need you, not just for my mission, but for me. I want to be with you, Jake. I want to try to build something beautiful together. Jake felt all his doubts melting away. Looking at Zira, seeing the love and hope in her eyes, he finally understood what his heart had been trying to tell him for days. I want that too, he said softly. They were so focused on each other that they didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway. They didn't notice the storage room door opening behind them. Jake, I thought I heard voices and I wanted to make sure you were ... Dr. Chen's voice trailed off as she saw them together. Jake and Zira turned around slowly. Dr. Chen stood in the doorway, her mouth open in shock, staring at Zira's blue glowing skin and violet eyes. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The secret that Jake and Zira had been trying so hard to keep was finally out. Jake, Dr. Chen said in a whisper, what is going on here? Who is she? Jake looked at Zira, then back at Dr. Chen. There was no hiding the truth anymore. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Lisa, he said calmly, I think you should sit down. This is going to be a very long conversation. Dr. Chen sat in Jake's living room, her hands shaking as she held a cup of tea. For the past hour, Jake and Zira had been explaining everything. The crash, Zira's mission, her dying people, and the impossible choice they were facing. Dr. Chen had listened in stunned silence, occasionally asking questions that proved she was struggling to believe what she was hearing. "So you're telling me," Dr. Chen said slowly, "that she's from another galaxy. Her entire species is dying out, and she's here to see if humans can help save them by having children together." "I know it sounds impossible," Jake said, "but everything I've told you is true." Dr. Chen looked at Zira, who had been quietly answering questions about her world and her people. "And you can prove this, that you're really from another planet?" Zira nodded and pulled out her pendant. She pressed a small section on its surface, and suddenly the crystal projected a three-dimensional image into the air above the coffee table. It showed a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver oceans, with great cities carved into mountainsides. "This is Lyrian," Zira said softly. "My home." Dr. Chen gasped and reached toward the image, her hand passing through the holographic projection. "This is incredible. This changes everything we know about life in the universe," Jake said carefully. "I need you to understand something. No one else can know about this. Not yet. Zira's people aren't ready for contact with Earth's governments or military. They're too vulnerable right now." Dr. Chen looked back and forth between them. "But Jake, this is the discovery of the century. Maybe the discovery in all of human history. We can't just keep it secret." "We're not keeping it secret forever," Zira said. "Just until we know what we're going to do. Until we know if there's really a way to help my people." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying both of their faces. "You two care about each other, don't you? This isn't just about saving her species." Jake felt his cheeks get warm. Yes. We do care about each other. "I love him," Zira said simply. "I came here on a mission, but I found something I never expected to find. I found someone who makes me want to stay, who makes me want to build a life, and I love her too," Jake added. "I know this whole situation is crazy and complicated, but my feelings for Zira are real." Dr. Chen smiled for the first time since discovering their secret. "You know what? I can see it. The way you two look at each other, the way you protect each other, it's obvious you're in love." Over the next 2 days, Dr. Chen helped them think through their options. She was a brilliant scientist, and she understood the genetic and biological challenges they would face better than Jake did. She also understood the historical importance of what they were considering. "If this works," she said on her last evening at the station, "if you two can have a healthy child together, it will prove that life in the universe is more connected than we ever imagined. But more importantly, it will give Zira's people hope. And if it doesn't work," Zira asked quietly, "then at least you'll have tried, and you'll still have each other." After Dr. Chen left, promising to keep their secret and to help them however she could, Jake and Zira found themselves alone again. But this time, everything was different. They had been honest with each other about their feelings, and they had a witness to their love who supported them. That evening, they sat by the fireplace like they had so many times before, but now Zira was curled up next to Jake on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder. Her pendant lay on the coffee table, no longer something she fidgeted with nervously, but simply a tool they might need for the future. "Are you scared?" Jake asked, running his fingers through her silver-streaked hair. "A little," Zira admitted, "but not about having a child with you. I'm scared about what comes after. What if our child becomes famous throughout the galaxy? What if governments and scientists want to study our family? What if we can't give our child a normal life?" Jake thought about this. Maybe normal is overrated. Maybe our child will grow up knowing they're part of something bigger, something that brought two worlds together. "2 worlds," Zira repeated. "I like that." A month later, Zira's pendant began glowing differently. The bioscanner had detected changes in her body that meant their hopes were becoming reality. They were going to have a baby. Jake felt a mixture of joy and terror when Zira told him the news. They sat in their kitchen, holding hands across the table, both of them crying happy tears. "We did it," Zira whispered. "We're really going to have a child." "Are you happy?" Jake asked. "I'm more than happy. I'm complete." She placed her free hand on her stomach, even though it was too early to show any changes. "This baby will be proof that love can overcome anything, even the distance between galaxies." As winter turned to spring, Zira's pregnancy progressed normally. Dr. Chen visited several times, bringing medical equipment and checking on both mother and baby. Everything seemed healthy and strong. Jake found himself talking to Zira's belly every night, telling their unborn child stories about Earth and asking Zira to translate them into her own language. He wanted their baby to know both worlds from the very beginning, What should we name the baby? He asked one evening as they watched the sunset together. Something that means bridge in both our languages, Zero suggested. This child will be a bridge between our peoples. 6 months later, their daughter was born. She was perfect, with Jake's brown eyes and Zera's delicate features. Her skin had a very faint blue tint that was only visible in certain light, and her hair was dark like Jake's, but with thin silver threads like her mother's dot. As Jake held his daughter for the first time, he felt overwhelmed with love and responsibility. This tiny person represented hope for an entire dying civilization, but more than that, she represented the love between him and Zero. "Hello, little one," he whispered to her. "Welcome to both your worlds." Zero watched from the bed, tired but glowing with happiness. "She's beautiful, Jake. She's absolutely perfect. What should we call her?" Jake asked. "Luna," Zero said without hesitation. "In your language, it means moon. In mine, it means new beginning. She's both." Dr. Chen, who had helped deliver the baby, wiped tears from her eyes. "Luna is going to change everything. When the world is ready to know about her, she'll be proof that the universe is full of possibilities we never imagined." That night, as Jake and Zero took turns holding Luna and marveling at the miracle they had created together, they talked about the future. Someday, they would have to contact Zero's people and tell them about their success. Someday, they might have to share their story with the world. But for now, they were just a family. A very unusual family, but a family filled with love. Jake looked at Zero, who was singing a soft lullaby in her own language to their sleeping daughter. He thought back to that night when he had seen strange lights in the sky and followed them to a crashed ship. He had thought he was just satisfying his scientific curiosity. Instead, he had found the love of his life and helped bring hope to a dying world. "Thank you," he whispered to Zero. "For what?" "For crashing into my life, for trusting me, for choosing love." Zero smiled and reached for his hand. "Thank you for saving me, and for giving me a reason to believe in tomorrow." Outside their window, the stars shone brightly in the clear Alaska sky. Somewhere among those stars was Lyrian, where Zero's people waited for news that would determine their future. But here on Earth, in a small research station that had become a home, 3 people slept peacefully, knowing they had created something beautiful together. Luna would grow up knowing she was special, but also knowing she was loved. And maybe that was the most important thing of all.